Imagine a small café tucked away in a quiet street where the air smells faintly of chamomile and freshly baked bread. The afternoon sun spills through the window, painting golden patches on the wooden table. A woman sits there, her hands cradling a cup of tea, steam curling upward like a soft whisper. Her name is Elena, and her mind drifts, not to the bustle of the day, but to something deeper, something that hums beneath the surface of her life. Why, she wonders, does being kind, so endlessly giving, sometimes leave her feeling like a balloon, slowly losing air? Why does her heart, so full of care for others, sometimes feel heavy, as if it's carrying a stone? This isn't a question that demands a loud answer. It's a gentle one, like the sound of leaves rustling outside the cafe window. And to explore it, we'll wander through the ideas of Carl Jung, a Swiss thinker who saw the mind as a vast, quiet lake with depths we rarely see. Jung believed that our relationships, our friendships, our moments of kindness are like ripples on that lake, showing us who we are deep down. But being too nice, giving too much, can stir up waves that pull us away from ourselves. So, let's sit with Elena, sip that tea, and let the story unfold, soft and slow, like a bedtime tale meant to ease you into sleep. Elena's cafe is warm, the kind of place where time feels soft, like a blanket. She's always been kind, you see. As a child, she shared her toys, her snacks, even her secrets, because kindness felt like a key that unlocked smiles, and smiles, to Elena, were treasures. But now, as she sits here, her tea cooling, she notices something. Her kindness, her endless giving, doesn't always bring smiles back. Sometimes it leaves her tired, her shoulders slumped, as if she's been carrying someone else's bag all day. And Jung, with his quiet wisdom, might say this tiredness isn't just about her body, it's about her psyche, that inner world where thoughts and feelings dance. Jung thought of the psyche as a house with many rooms. There's the room you show everyone, the ego, the part of you that says, "This is me." Then there's a hidden room, the personal unconscious, where you tuck away memories and feelings you don't want to see. And deeper still, there's a vast basement, the collective unconscious, filled with archetypes, universal patterns like the hero or the wise old man that live in all of us. When Elena is kind, she's opening the door to her ego, showing the world her best self. But when she's too kind, giving until she's empty, she's stepping into that hidden room, brushing against things she's tried to forget, like her need to say no or her fear of being alone. Let's picture Elena's tea, the steam rising and lazy swirls. Jung would say her kindness is part of her persona, the mask she wears to fit in, to be loved. But every mask has a shadow, and Jung called this the shadow. The part of you that holds what you push away, anger, selfishness, or the need to stand up for yourself. When Elena gives too much, she's ignoring her shadow, pretending it's not there. And the more she ignores it, the heavier it grows, like a pile of unsorted letters stacking up in the corner of her mind. Being too nice, Jung might whisper, is like locking the door to that hidden room. But the shadow doesn't like being locked away. It knocks, softly at first, then louder, until Elena feels that weight, that stone in her heart. Let's stay in the cafe a little longer. The sun now dipping lower, casting long shadows across the floor. Elena thinks of a friend, Sarah, who calls her often, her voice spilling over with troubles. A fight with her partner, a bad day at work. Elena listens, her tea growing cold, offering gentle words. Our after hour. She wants to help, to be the friend Sarah needs. But when she hangs up, she feels hollow, like a glass emptied too quickly. Sarah rarely asks how Elena is doing, and yet Elena keeps answering, keeps giving, because saying no feels like closing a door she's afraid to lock. Jung would nod, his eyes kind but knowing. This, he'd say, is the people pleaser, the first pattern of being too nice. It's a dance between Elena's persona and her shadow. Her persona says, be kind, be helpful, and you'll be loved. But her shadow whispers, what about you? What do you need? And Elena, afraid of that whisper, pushes it down, projecting it onto Sarah. Projection, Jung explained, is when you see your own hidden feelings in someone else. Elena projects her fear of being unlovable onto Sarah, thinking, if I don't help her, she'll leave me. And Sarah perhaps projects her own shadow, her neediness, her fear of standing alone, onto Elena, leaning on her like a crutch. This dance creates a complex, a knot of emotions that Jung saw as a bundle of energy in the psyche. Elena's complex might be a savior complex, a belief that she must rescue others to be worthy. It's like a script she follows, without knowing, making her say yes when her heart says no. And this script pulls her away from individuation, Jung's word for the journey to become whole, to balance all the parts of yourself, kindness and strength, giving and receiving. Individuation is like tending a garden, nurturing every plant, not just the ones that bloom for others. But when Elena is too nice, she's neglecting her own flowers, letting them wilt while she waters someone else's. Being a people pleaser, Jung might say, is like pouring your energy into a cup with a hole. It drains you, not because kindness is wrong, but because kindness without balance forgets the self, the archetype of wholeness that lives in that deep basement of the psyche. The self wants Elena to grow, to shine, but she can't if she's always giving her light away. So if the café grows quieter, Elena sips her tea and wonders, how do I stop? How do I say no? Jung would suggest starting small, like a seed planted in soft earth. Notice how you feel after giving, he'd say. If you're tired, heavy, or resentful, that's your shadow knocking. Write it down, like a letter to yourself. I felt drained after helping Sarah. I wanted to rest, but I didn't. Then, practice a gentle no, like a breeze that moves a leaf. Sarah, I care about you, but I can't talk right now. Let's catch up later. And find friends who fill your cup too, who ask about your day, who share the weight. This isn't selfish, Jung would murmur. It's part of becoming whole. The sun is lower now. The café bathed in a soft orange glow. Elena's thoughts drift to another friend, Mark, who always seems to need something. A ride to the airport, help with a project, a loan he forgets to repay. Elena gives, because that's what she does. She's the helper, the one who makes things better. But after helping Mark, she feels a quiet anger, like a cloud passing over the sun. She doesn't want to feel this way, but it's there, simmering. Jung would call this the giver, the second pattern of being too nice. It's a pattern where Elena's kindness becomes a one-way street, her energy flowing out but rarely back. In Jung's house of the psyche, this is a power complex, where Mark, perhaps unconsciously, seeks control by taking, and Elena, just as unconsciously, seeks validation by giving. It's another projection. Mark projects his shadow, maybe his fear of inadequacy, onto Elena, relying on her to feel strong. And Elena projects her own shadow, her fear of being unworthy unless she's useful, onto Mark, believing she must give to be valued. This complex, this need to give, blocks Elena's Animus, the archetype Jung saw as the masculine energy in a woman's psyche, the part that stands firm, that says, this is enough. The Animus is like a steady tree, rooted and strong, But Elena's tree is bending, weighed down by Mark's requests. And this bending pulls her away from individuation, from the balance of giving and receiving that the self craves. Her psychic energy, that spark Jung called libido, is leaking away, leading her less for her dreams, her joys, her own quiet moments in the café. Being a giver, Jung would say, is like watering a garden that never blooms for you. It's not that giving is wrong, it's beautiful, like sunlight, but giving without return starves your own soil. So Elena might try a small step, like a pebble dropped in a pond. She could say, "Mark, I can't help this time, but I'm sure you'll figure it out." She could notice the balance, asking, "What do I give? What do I get?" And she could seek friends who share, who bring their own water to the garden, creating a circle of care. As the cafe's light softens, Elena feels a flicker of hope, like a star appearing in the dusk. Maybe she can give, but also keep something for herself. Let's linger in the cafe, the air now cooler, the scent of chamomile still faint. Elena thinks of a coworker, Lisa, who always seems to see the dark side of things. When Elena shares a new idea, a trip she's planning, a hobby she's trying, Lisa sighs. That sounds nice, but it'll probably be a hassle. Their talks leave Elena heavy, her excitement dimmed, like a lamp turned low. She doesn't want to judge Lisa, but she notices the weight, the way her shoulders sink after they talk. Jung would call this the absorber, the third pattern of being too nice. It's when Elena absorbs someone else's negativity, letting it seep into her psyche, like rain into dry earth. Lisa, Jung might say, is projecting kanojo no shadow, her fears, her disappointments onto Elena, casting a cloud over her light. And Elena, by staying kind, by listening without pushing back, takes on that cloud, letting it stir her own shadow, her own doubts and fears. This creates a depressive complex, a heaviness that clings to her, making it harder to see the sun. In Jung's world, the psyche needs balance, like a scale that holds both light and dark. Negativity, when it's constant, tips that scale, pulling Elena away from the self's joy and creativity. It also blocks her anima, the feminine archetype of intuition and inspiration, the part that dreams of trips and hobbies. The anima is like a river, flowing and bright, but Lisa's negativity is a dam, slowing that flow. And this dam stalls individuation, keeping Elena from the wholeness she seeks. Being an absorber, Jung would murmur, is like letting someone else's rain soak your garden. It's not that you shouldn't care, it's human to listen, but caring without protection drowns your own blooms. So, Elena might try redirecting, like a gentle wind. Lisa, let's talk about something fun instead. She might limit their talks, choosing texts over long chats, saving her energy. And she might seek friends who shine, who share her light, like stars in a clear sky. As the cafe grows dim, Elena feels a softness, a sense that her garden can bloom again if she guards it. The cafe is quieter now, the last rays of sun fading. Elena's thoughts turn to a friend, Claire, who always knows best. When Elena talks about her job, her plans, Claire interrupts. "You should do this instead. That's not the way." Her words are firm, like a hand steering a wheel, and Elena feels small, her voice shrinking. She wants to please Claire, to keep the peace. So she nods, but inside, she feels a knot, tight and sharp. Jung would call this the follower, the fourth pattern of being too nice. It's when Elena lets someone else take charge, giving up her own path to avoid conflict. Claire, Jung might say, has a power complex, projecting her shadow, maybe her fear of uncertainty, onto Elena, controlling to feel secure. And Elena, by yielding, projects her own shadow, her fear of standing alone, onto Claire, believing she must follow to be accepted. This creates a submission complex, a pattern where Elena feels she must obey, even when it chokes her. This pattern blocks Elena's animus, that strong tree of assertiveness. It's as if Claire's control is a storm, bending Elena's branches, keeping her from standing tall. And this bending stalls individuation, keeping Elena from the self's call to be free, to choose her own way. Her psychic energy, that precious spark, is tied up in pleasing Claire, leaving less for her own dreams. Being a follower, Jung would say, is like letting someone else paint your canvas. It's not that you shouldn't listen. Advice is a gift, but listening without choice erases your colors. So Elena might try speaking, like a soft breeze. Claire, I value your thoughts, but I'm going to decide this myself. She might set boundaries, like a fence around her garden, keeping her choices safe. And she might seek friends who respect her voice, who let her paint with her own hues. As the cafe's light fades, Elena feels a spark, a sense that her canvas is hers to shape. The cafe is almost dark now, the only light from a small lamp in the corner. Elena's tea is cold, but her heart feels warm, stirred by a memory of a friend, Rachel, who seems perfect at first, charming, attentive, full of compliments. But Rachel has a way of twisting things, sharing Elena's secrets, stirring drama, making Elena feel less than enough. After their talks, Elena feels a knot in her chest, a mix of hurt and doubt, like a bruise that lingers. Jung would call this the enabler, the fifth pattern of being too nice. It's when Elena stays kind to someone who hurts her, excusing their harm to keep the peace. Rachel, Jung might say, embodies the trickster archetype, a chaotic force that manipulates for its own gain, projecting her shadow, jealousy, perhaps, or insecurity, onto Elena. And Elena, by staying, enables this, projecting her own shadow, her fear of loneliness onto Rachel, believing she must endure to be loved. This creates a victim complex, a pattern where Elena feels powerless, trapped in Rachel's web. This pattern is the heaviest, blocking Elena's connection to the self, the heart of individuation. The self wants trust, growth, but Rachel's manipulation erodes that, making Elena doubt her own judgment. It also chokes her anima and animus, the river and tree, leaving her stuck, unable to flow or stand. Her energy, that spark, is consumed by Rachel's chaos, leaving little for Elena's own light. Being an enabler, Jung would whisper, is like tending a garden that poisons your soil. It's not that you shouldn't forgive. Forgiveness is human, but forgiving without change lets the poison spread. So, Elena might step back, like a leaf falling from a tree, reducing contact, guarding her secrets. She might seek help, talking to a friend or therapist, untangling the knot, and she might reflect, asking, why do I stay? What fear keeps me here? As the cafe grows still, Elena feels a quiet strength, a sense that her garden can heal if she protects it. The cafe is silent now, the lamp casting a soft glow. Elena's tea sits untouched, but her mind is clear, like a sky after rain. Jung's ideas, like stars, light her path. Being too nice, she sees, isn't about kindness, it's about balance, about honoring the self as much as others. The people pleaser, the giver, the absorber, the follower, the enabler, these are patterns, mirrors of her shadow, her complexes, her fears, but they're also teachers, showing her where to grow, where to set boundaries, where to shine. Individuation, Jung would say, is like weaving a tapestry, each thread a part of you. Kindness, strength, joy, rest. Being too nice frays those threads, pulling the tapestry apart. But choosing balance, giving with limits, listening with care, standing with courage, weaves it whole. And the collective unconscious, that vast basement, holds this truth for all of us, in myths and stories of heroes who learn to say no, to choose themselves, to become whole. As Elena leaves the café, a night air cool against her skin, she feels lighter, like a bird ready to fly. Jung's wisdom, like a gentle lullaby, reminds her, your heart is a garden, your life a canvas, your psyche a lake. Tend it, paint it, let it ripple, but don't let it drain. Be kind, but be whole. Choose relationships that lift you, that shine with you, that weave your tapestry bright. And now, as you listen to this tale, let your eyes grow heavy, your breath slow. The cafe fades, the tea cools, and Jung's words drift like clouds. Sleep, dear one, knowing your garden is yours to tend, your light, yours to shine. Good night. People we should avoid as friends, a Jungian perspective. Chapter 1, The Weight of Friendship. The afternoon sun filtered through the cafe window, casting a warm glow over the wooden table where she sat, a cup of tea cooling in her hands. Her mind wandered, tracing the threads of her life, moments of joy, heartbreak, and the people who had shaped her journey. Some friends had lifted her spirits, their laughter like a melody that carried her through dark days. Others, though, left a heavier mark, conversations that drained her, moments that left her questioning her worth. As she sipped her tea, a question lingered. Why do some friendships feel like anchors, pulling me down instead of lifting me up? This question resonates deeply in the context of Carl Jung's psychology, which views relationships as mirrors of the psyche, reflecting both our light and our shadows. Jung, the visionary Swiss psychologist, believed that every interaction, especially with friends, engages the unconscious, activating archetypes, complexes, and the process of individuation, the journey toward becoming a whole, authentic self. In his words, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Through this lens, friendships are not just social bonds, but opportunities for self-discovery, revealing the parts of our psyche we embrace and those we repress. Yet, not all friendships foster growth. Some friends, whether intentionally or not, trigger our insecurities, disrupt our balance, or hinder our path to individuation. The question, who should we avoid as friends, becomes a matter of psychological survival. A call to protect our inner world and choose relationships that align with our quest for wholeness. This 6,000-word exploration, grounded in Jung's theories, will weave a narrative of a woman's journey to discern the friends who uplift her from those who weigh her down. Through her story, we'll identify 5 types of friends to avoid, analyze their impact through Jungian concepts, and offer practical guidance for setting boundaries and cultivating healthy connections. Let this journey inspire you to honor your worth, protect your psyche, and surround yourself with those who help you shine. Chapter 2. Jung's lens on relationships. To understand why some friends are best avoided, we must first explore Carl Jung's psychological framework, which places relationships at the heart of personal growth. Jung viewed the psyche as a dynamic system, comprising the conscious ego, the personal unconscious, and the collective unconscious, a universal reservoir of archetypes shared by all humanity. Relationships, including friendships, are arenas where these elements interact, revealing the interplay of light and shadow within us. Jung's concept of individuation is central to this discussion. Individuation is the lifelong process of integrating the conscious and unconscious, balancing opposing aspects of the psyche, such as the masculine and feminine, the rational and emotional, to become a whole self. Friends play a critical role in this journey, acting as mirrors that reflect our strengths, vulnerabilities, and unresolved conflicts. A supportive friend can activate our self, the archetype of wholeness, encouraging us to grow. A toxic friend, however, may trigger our shadow, the repressed, often negative aspects of the psyche, or our complexes, emotionally charged patterns that distort our behavior. Jung also emphasized the role of projection, where we attribute unconscious qualities to others. In friendships, we may project our shadow, e.g., insecurity, anger, or our anima animus, the contrasexual archetypes, onto others, shaping how we perceive them. A friend who criticizes us might reflect our own self-doubt, while one who manipulates might mirror an unintegrated need for control. Recognizing these projections is key to understanding why certain friends feel harmful and how they disrupt our individuation. The thesis "people we should avoid as friends" aligns with Jung's belief that not all relationships serve our growth. Some friends, through their behaviors or unconscious dynamics, pull us away from wholeness, activating destructive patterns or draining our psychic energy. By identifying these types, we can protect our journey and choose friends who support our quest for authenticity. Her story, The Woman in the Café, will guide us through this exploration as she reflects on her friendships and learns to discern those who harm from those who heal. Chapter 3. The Critic. The Friend Who Undermines. As she sat in the cafe, her thoughts drifted to a friend she'd known for years. Their conversations often started warmly, filled with shared memories, but they inevitably turned sour. A casual remark about her new job would elicit a dismissive, "Oh, that sounds like a lot of work for little reward." A proud moment, completing a creative project, would be met with, "It's nice, but I've seen better." These comments, cloaked in humor or honesty, left her feeling small, her confidence chipped away like paint on an old wall. The Jungian perspective. In Jung's framework, this critical friend activates the shadow, the unconscious part of the psyche that contains repressed fears, insecurities, and traits we deny. The critic's words often mirror our own self-doubt, amplifying the inner voice that questions our worth. Jung would suggest that this friend is projecting their own shadow, perhaps their own fears of failure or inadequacy, onto her, using criticism to deflect their inner turmoil. This dynamic creates a complex and emotionally charged pattern, e.g. an inferiority complex, that distorts her self-perception, making her feel unworthy or inadequate. The critic's behavior also disrupts individuation. By constantly undermining her, they hinder her connection to the self, the archetype of wholeness, that affirms her unique value. Instead, they pull her into the shadow, where self-doubt festers, stalling her growth. Jung believed that confronting such projections is part of individuation, but prolonged exposure to criticism can overwhelm the psyche, making it harder to reclaim confidence. Why avoid them? A friend who consistently criticizes erodes self-esteem and blocks personal growth. Their negativity creates a psychic drain, sapping the energy needed for creativity, ambition, and self-discovery. While occasional constructive feedback can be valuable, relentless criticism, especially when it lacks empathy, signals a friendship that harms more than it helps. How to navigate? Recognize the impact. Pay attention to how you feel after interacting with them. If you feel diminished, insecure, or exhausted, their criticism is likely toxic. Set boundaries. Politely but firmly reject harmful comments. For example, "I appreciate feedback, but that felt hurtful. Let's focus on something positive." Limit exposure. If the behavior persists, reduce contact. Spend time with friends who affirm your worth and celebrate your successes. Reflect on projections. Use Jung's insight to explore what their criticism reveals about your shadow. Journaling questions like "What insecurities do their words trigger?" can help you integrate these aspects and grow. Motivational message. You are a unique soul, radiant with potential. Surround yourself with friends who see your light and help you shine brighter, not those who cast shadows over your dreams. Trust your worth and choose connections that uplift your spirit. Chapter 4. The User. The friend who takes without giving. Her thoughts shifted to another friend, one who always seemed to need something, a favor, a loan, or an ear to listen to their endless troubles. She'd spent hours helping them through crises, but when she needed support, a shoulder to cry on after a tough day, they were nowhere to be found. Their friendship felt like a one-way street. Her energy poured into a void with little return. The Jungian perspective. This friend embodies a power complex, a pattern where they seek control or validation by taking from others. Jung would argue that their behavior projects their unintegrated shadow, perhaps a fear of vulnerability or inadequacy, onto her, using her generosity to bolster their own sense of worth. This dynamic activates her own complexes, such as a savior complex, a need to rescue others, or a fear of abandonment, making her feel obligated to give despite the imbalance. In Jung's view, this friendship disrupts individuation by undermining her connection to the self. The self seeks balance and reciprocity, but a user exploits her energy, leaving her depleted and disconnected from her own needs. Their one-sided demands also block her from integrating her animus, for a woman, the archetype of assertiveness, as she struggles to set boundaries and prioritize herself. Why avoid them? A friendship that only takes is not a true friendship. It drains your psychic energy, leaving you feeling unvalued and disconnected from your own growth. Healthy relationships thrive on mutual give and take, fostering growth for both parties. How to navigate? Assess the balance. Reflect on what you give versus what you receive. If the scales tip heavily, the friendship is unsustainable. Set limits. Practice saying no to unreasonable requests. For example, I can't help with that right now, but I hope you find a solution. Seek reciprocity. Invest in friends who offer support and care in return, creating a balanced dynamic. Explore your role. Use Jung's lens to examine why you tolerate imbalance. Are you driven by a need to be needed? Journaling can help uncover these patterns and strengthen your animus. Motivational message. Your energy is precious, a gift to be shared with those who value it. Choose friends who give as much as they take, creating a circle of mutual growth. You deserve relationships that honor your generosity and reflect your worth. Chapter 5. The Negativist, the friend who drains energy. Another friend came to mind, one whose presence felt like a storm cloud. Every conversation was a litany of complaints about their job, their relationships, the world itself. Even her moments of excitement, a new hobby, a travel plan, were met with cynicism. That sounds nice, but it'll probably fall through. After their meetups, she felt heavy, her optimism dulled, as if their negativity had seeped into her bones. The Jungian perspective, Jung would view this friend as projecting an unintegrated shadow, where their unresolved fears, anger, or despair manifest as chronic negativity. Their complaints are not just about external circumstances, but a reflection of their inner turmoil, which they externalize onto others. This dynamic can activate her own shadow, stirring feelings of doubt or hopelessness that hinder her individuation. It may also trigger a depressive complex, where she internalizes their negativity, losing touch with herself and its capacity for joy. Jung believed that the psyche thrives on balance, and prolonged exposure to negativity disrupts this harmony. The negativist's energy pulls her away from the creative, life-affirming aspects of her psyche, making it harder to pursue her goals or maintain a positive outlook. Their influence can also block her connection to the Anima, Animus, as their cynicism stifles the inspiration and assertiveness needed for growth. Why avoid them? Negativity is contagious, sapping your energy and clouding your perspective. A friend who constantly dwells on the negative can derail your motivation, making it harder to pursue your dreams or maintain emotional balance. How to navigate? Redirect the conversation. When they start complaining, gently shift to positive topics or encourage problem solving. For example, that sounds tough. Have you thought about what you could do? Protect your energy. Limit time spent with them, opting for brief interactions or text-based communication to reduce emotional impact. Seek positive influences. Surround yourself with friends who inspire optimism and share your enthusiasm for life. Reflect on your shadow. Use Jung's insight to explore why their negativity affects you. Are there fears or doubts in your shadow that resonate with their complaints? Meditation or journaling can help integrate these aspects. Motivational message. Your life is a canvas, and you have the power to paint it with vibrant colors. Choose friends who add light to your palette, not those who dim your brilliance. Embrace your capacity for joy and let it guide you to connections that uplift your soul. Chapter 6. The Controller. The friend who dominates. Her thoughts turn to a friend who always seemed to take charge. Whether planning a group outing or discussing her life choices, they had an opinion, often unsolicited, and expected her to follow it. "You should quit that job. It's not for you," they'd say, dismissing her perspective. Their insistence made her feel like her voice didn't matter, her autonomy slipping away in their presence. The Jungian perspective. This friend exhibits a power complex, using control to compensate for their own unconscious insecurities or fears of chaos. Jung would argue that they project their shadow, perhaps a fear of vulnerability or failure, onto her, seeking to dominate to feel secure. This dynamic can trigger her own complexes, such as a submission complex, where she feels compelled to yield to avoid conflict, or a fear of asserting her animus, the archetype of independence and strength. In terms of individuation, the controller disrupts her connection to the self, which thrives on autonomy and self-expression. By imposing their will, they stifle her ability to make choices aligned with her true self, slowing her psychological growth. Their dominance also blocks her from integrating her animus, as she struggles to assert her needs and boundaries. Why avoid them? A controlling friend undermines your autonomy, making you feel like a passenger in your own life. True friendship respects your freedom, encouraging you to chart your own path, not dictating it. How to navigate? Assert your voice. Politely express your needs. For example, "I appreciate your input, but I'm going to decide this for myself." Establish boundaries. Firmly reject oversteps, such as, "I value our friendship, but I need to make my own choices." Reevaluate the relationship. If they refuse to respect your autonomy, consider distancing yourself to protect your independence. Strengthen your animus. Reflect on why you tolerate control. Practices like assertiveness training or journaling can help you integrate your animus and reclaim your power. Motivational message. You are the captain of your soul, steering your life toward your dreams. Choose friends who honor your freedom and cheer your journey, not those who try to take the helm. Embrace your strength and let it guide you to relationships that empower you. Chapter 7. The Toxic Friend, the Manipulator. The heaviest memory was of a friend whose presence was a paradox, charming yet destructive. They seemed caring, always ready with a compliment or a listening ear, but their actions told a different story. They'd share her secrets with others, twist her words to create drama, or subtly compete, making her feel like she was never enough. After their interactions, she felt anxious, betrayed, a knot of unease tightening in her chest. The Jungian perspective. This toxic friend embodies a deeply unintegrated shadow, projecting their unresolved emotions, jealousy, anger, or insecurity onto her in manipulative ways. Jung would see their behavior as a manifestation of a trickster archetype, a chaotic force that disrupts harmony for its own gain. Their actions trigger her complexes, such as a victim complex, feeling powerless, or a fear of betrayal, pulling her away from the self and its quest for wholeness. In the context of individuation, the toxic friend is particularly harmful. Their manipulation erodes trust, both in the relationship and in her own judgment, making it harder to navigate her psychological growth. They may also block her connection to the Anima Animus, as their deceit undermines the confidence and intuition needed to assert her true self. Why avoid them? A toxic friend is a psychic vampire, draining your emotional energy and sowing doubt in your heart. Their manipulation creates a cycle of pain, hindering your ability to trust and grow. True friendship is a sanctuary, not a battlefield. How to navigate. Identify toxic patterns. Keep a record of interactions that leave you hurt or manipulated to clarify their impact. Gradual disengagement. Reduce contact, avoid sharing personal details, and focus on healthier relationships. Seek support. If leaving is difficult due to guilt or fear, confide in a trusted friend or therapist for guidance. Confront your shadow. Use Jung's insight to explore why you're drawn to or tolerate toxicity. Are there fears of loneliness or rejection in your shadow? Therapy or self-reflection can help integrate these aspects. Motivational message. Your heart is a sacred space, deserving of love and respect. Let go of those who poison it, and open your life to friends who nurture your soul. You have the courage to choose connections that honor your light. Embrace it. Chapter 8. The Journey of Individuation. Choosing Wisely. Her reflections in the café were more than a catalog of difficult friends. They were a turning point in her journey of individuation. Jung taught that every relationship is a mirror, reflecting the conscious and unconscious aspects of the psyche. The friends she needed to avoid, the critic, the user, the negativist, the controller, the toxic manipulator, were not just external figures but symbols of her inner world. Their behaviors triggered her shadow, her complexes, and her fears, challenging her to confront and integrate these aspects. Individuation, for Jung, is not about isolating oneself, but about choosing relationships that align with the self. By recognizing the friends who harm her, she was learning to set boundaries, assert her animus, and protect her psychic energy. This process was painful but empowering, a step toward becoming a whole, authentic self. Each decision to distance herself from a toxic friend was a declaration of self-worth, a commitment to her growth. Jung's concept of synchronicity also played a role. The moments when she felt drained or hurt were not random. They were meaningful signals from her unconscious, urging her to pay attention to her relationships. By listening to these signals, she could align her life with her true path, surrounding herself with friends who supported her individuation. Chapter 9. The Collective Unconscious. Friendship as a Universal Dance. Jung's idea of the collective unconscious adds a universal dimension to her journey. Friendships are not just personal but archetypal, echoing patterns that have shaped human connection for millennia. The critic, the user, the toxic manipulator. These are not just individuals, but manifestations of archetypes like the trickster, the tyrant, or the shadow. Her struggle to choose wisely is part of a timeless human story, reflected in myths, literature, and cultural narratives. This perspective elevates her choices to a cosmic level. By avoiding harmful friends, she is participating in the universal quest for balance, aligning her personal journey with the collective wisdom of humanity. Her decisions are not just about her, but about honoring the archetypes of connection, trust, and growth that reside in the collective unconscious. Chapter 10. Conclusion. Embracing Healthy Friendships. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the café grew quiet, and her tea had long gone cold. But her heart felt warmer, lighter, as if a weight had lifted. Reflecting on her friendships through Jung's lens, she saw them not as burdens but as opportunities. For growth, for self-discovery, for wholeness. The friends she needed to avoid were not enemies, but teachers, showing her the importance of boundaries, self-worth, and the courage to choose wisely. Through Carl Jung's psychology, the question people we should avoid as friends becomes a call to protect your psyche and honor your journey of individuation. The critic, the user, the negativist, the controller, the toxic manipulator. These are not just people, but mirrors of your unconscious, challenging you to confront your shadow, integrate your animus, and connect with yourself. By recognizing their impact and setting boundaries, you reclaim your power, creating space for friendships that uplift and inspire. Your journey, your life is a sacred tapestry, woven with the threads of your relationships. Choose friends who add vibrant colors, who celebrate your light and walk beside you on your path to wholeness. Trust your intuition, honor your worth, and let go of those who dim your spirit. You are not alone in this journey. The universe, through its archetypes, is guiding you toward connections that nurture your soul. Step boldly into the friendships you deserve and let them illuminate your way.
Close your eyes for a moment. Feel the pulse of energy deep within you, a spark, wild and untamed, flickering like a flame in the dark. This is your life force, your creative essence, what Carl Jung called libido. It's not just desire, it's the heartbeat of your soul, the drive to create, to connect, to become whole. But what happens when this flame burns out of control or is smothered by shame? What happens when the very energy meant to empower you leaves you feeling drained, lost, or small? Today, we embark on a transformative journey into the mind of Carl Jung, the Swiss visionary who saw sexuality as a sacred force, a fire that can either consume or illuminate your personal power. From the shadows of the unconscious to the radiant light of self-discovery, Jung's wisdom offers a map to reclaim your vitality and rise into the fullness of who you are. So take a deep breath, open your heart, and let's step into the alchemy of desire. Carl Jung was no ordinary thinker. Born in 1875, he was a mystic, a poet of the psyche, a man who dared to explore the hidden depths of the human soul. Unlike his mentor Sigmund Freud, who saw sex as the root of all human behavior, Jung had a broader vision. He redefined libido as a universal life force, flowing through every act of creation, painting a canvas, writing a story, falling in love, or seeking the divine. Sexuality for Jung was one of its most potent expressions, a bridge between the body and the soul, the personal and the eternal. When channeled with intention, it's a source of immense power, fueling confidence, creativity, and connection. But when misused through compulsion, repression, or hollow encounters, it becomes a leak in the soul, draining the very energy that makes us whole. Picture your libido as a mighty river, carving paths through the landscape of your psyche. When it flows toward purpose, toward art, meaningful relationships, or spiritual growth, it nourishes everything it touches. Your sense of self strengthens, your vision sharpens, your presence becomes magnetic. This is the essence of personal power, what Jung called individuation, the lifelong journey to integrate every part of your psyche into a radiant whole. But when the river is dammed by shame or diverted into shallow streams, like chasing fleeting pleasures, numbing pain with sex, or seeking validation in the arms of the wrong person, it scatters your energy. You wake up feeling foggy, disconnected, as if a piece of your soul has slipped through your fingers. We've all felt this at some point. A moment when desire led us astray, when a choice left us emptier than before. Maybe it was a relationship that promised love but delivered chaos, or a habit that offered escape but trapped us in guilt. Jung would say these aren't just mistakes. They're signals from the psyche, cries for alignment. Personal power isn't about being perfect. It's about living in harmony with your deepest truth. When our sexual choices clash with that truth, we lose vitality, not because of some external judgment, but because we've strayed from the path to ourself, the archetype of wholeness at our core. Let's venture into one of Jung's most profound ideas, the shadow. Imagine a hidden chamber in your mind, a place where you've locked away everything you don't want to face. Desires you've been told are wrong, regrets you can't bear, guilt that burns like a quiet ember. For many, sexuality lives here, shrouded in silence. Maybe it's a past choice you've buried, a longing you've suppressed, or a wound you've never spoken aloud. Jung believed the shadow isn't evil. It's simply human, a part of you that yearns to be seen. But when we ignore it, it grows restless, leaking into our lives in ways we don't expect. Consider someone, let's call him Elias, who carried shame about a brief, impulsive affair. He pushed it down, vowing never to think of it again. But the shadow doesn't forget. It surfaced in his dreams, where a dark figure chased him through endless corridors. It whispered in moments of quiet, making him doubt his worth. He found himself pulling away from his partner, unable to explain why. Jung would say this is the shadow at work, draining Elias's power by forcing him to carry an invisible weight. As Jung wrote, what we resist persists. Repression doesn't free us, It binds us, stealing the energy we need to live fully. Jung's answer is radical yet simple. Face the shadow. Shine a light into that hidden chamber and meet your buried self with compassion. For Elias, this meant journaling about his shame, exploring its roots in a childhood where vulnerability was punished. It meant sitting with a therapist, unraveling the guilt that wasn't his alone. Through dream analysis, he began to understand the dark figure as a part of himself, longing for forgiveness. By naming and embracing these shadow elements, Elias reclaimed their energy. He felt lighter, more present, as if a fog had lifted. This is the power of integration, turning a thief into a teacher, a wound into wisdom. Now, let's explore the magic of archetypes, ancient patterns in the collective unconscious that shape our desires and dreams. Sexuality for Jung is a gateway to these archetypes, especially the Anima and Animus. The Anima is the feminine spark in men, intuition, tenderness, mystery. The Animus is the masculine fire in women, strength, logic, courage. When we feel a surge of attraction, we're often projecting these archetypes onto another, chasing the wholeness we sense in them. A healthy relationship, Jung believed, is a sacred dance. It challenges us to integrate the Anima or Animus, to embrace the qualities we've yet to claim. Picture a couple who inspire each other to grow. One partner's creativity, sparking the other's, their vulnerabilities forging deeper trust. This is sexuality at its highest, a union that mirrors the psyche's inner marriage. But when we choose partners who don't align with our soul's purpose, perhaps out of loneliness, lust, or fear, we risk a different kind of dance, one that leaves us stumbling. Let me tell you about Maya, a woman I once knew. Maya was drawn to men who seemed bold and charismatic, but each relationship left her feeling smaller, as if her light was dimming. She'd wake up with a heaviness she couldn't name, her confidence eroded. Through Jungian therapy, Maya began exploring her dreams, where a warrior woman appeared, fierce and radiant. This was her Animus, urging her to claim her own strength. Maya realized she'd been projecting her power onto others, seeking in them what she needed to nurture within. She started painting, pouring her passion into canvases that glowed with life. She chose solitude over shallow connections, and slowly her energy returned, unshakable and bright. This is the alchemy of the Anima and Animus, turning projection into integration, longing into power. Sexuality also channels the lover archetype, the embodiment of passion, beauty, and union. Jung saw love as a mystical act, a moment where the ego dissolves and we touch the divine. When sex is conscious, rooted in mutual respect, shared purpose, and reverence, it's transformative, like the alchemical conjunctio, the sacred union of opposites that birth something new. But when we use it to fill a void, to prove our worth, or to escape pain, we reduce it to a transaction. The lover weeps and we're left emptier than before, our power leaking through the cracks of a fractured soul. Jung's concept of the collective unconscious adds a deeper layer. Our sexual choices aren't just personal, they echo the stories of our ancestors, carried in the psyche like whispers from the past. Patterns of infidelity, emotional distance, or trauma can weave themselves into our lives, shaping our behavior in ways we don't see. Jung called these complexes unconscious scripts that act like invisible puppeteers. If your family carried a legacy of broken trust, you might find yourself repeating it, not because you choose to, but because it's etched in your soul's memory. I once worked with a man named Liam, who struggled to stay faithful in relationships. He felt trapped by his impulses, unaware they weren't entirely his own. Through dream analysis, Liam uncovered images of his father's betrayals, mirrored in his grandfather's silence. These weren't just stories, they were complexes, living in his unconscious. Jung would say Liam was carrying a generational wound, a shadow passed down through blood. Breaking this cycle required courage. Liam traced his family's history, journaled about his fears, and used active imagination to dialogue with the part of him that felt bound. Each step was a reclamation, freeing him to choose love over betrayal. Jung saw this as a heroic act, not just for oneself but for the generations to come, a ripple of healing through the collective unconscious. At the core of Jung's philosophy is individuation, the quest to become whole, to weave every thread of the psyche into a tapestry of power and purpose. Sexuality is a vital thread, a flame that can light the way or burn us down. Behaviors that drain power, repressing desire, chasing hollow pleasures, or staying in misaligned relationships, are detours, but they're also invitations. Jung believed the psyche is self-regulating, always seeking balance. That emptiness after a fleeting encounter, that guilt that lingers like a shadow, it's not punishment, it's a call to return to your path. Jung offers tools to answer this call. Dream analysis reveals the psyche's messages, like a map to buried treasure. Active imagination lets you converse with your inner figures, your desires, your shame, turning them into allies. Journaling uncovers hidden patterns, while therapy provides a safe space to unravel wounds. These practices align sexual energy with your purpose. Instead of seeking validation in others, channel libido into creation. Write a poem, build a garden, dance under the stars. Instead of escaping pain, sit with it. Let it teach you resilience. Choose relationships that lift you higher, that mirror your soul's potential. This is the alchemy of desire, turning raw fire into radiant gold. Jung had no patience for guilt that paralyzes. He saw it as a spark, a signal from the psyche urging growth. If you carry shame about your sexual past, don't hide from it. Ask, what need was I trying to meet? What wound was I soothing? Through a Jungian lens, every choice is a step in your story, a lesson in your becoming. By reframing these moments, you integrate them, transforming pain into wisdom. Jung called this amor fati, loving your fate, embracing every experience as part of your growth. In our modern world, sexuality is a battleground. Pornography floods our screens, promising intimacy but delivering isolation. Hookup culture glorifies freedom but often leaves us hollow. Societal pressures, be desirable, be perfect, pull us away from our truth. Jung would see this as a collective shadow, a struggle to integrate the primal and the sacred. His advice? Question the scripts you've been handed. Listen to your inner voice. Channel your fire into what makes you whole, whether it's a loving partnership, a creative passion, or a spiritual quest. Your power lies not in conforming, but in becoming. Carl Jung's vision is a clarion call. Your sexuality is not a chain to break, but a flame to wield. It's the pulse of your aliveness, the key to your power. By facing the shadow, embracing archetypes, breaking ancestral chains, and walking the path of individuation, you transform desire into destiny. You are not your mistakes, your shame, or your past. You are a soul in bloom, rising toward wholeness, radiant with purpose. So feel that fire within. Let it guide you. Step boldly into the light of who you're meant to be. Thank you for joining this journey into the fire within. May Jung's wisdom ignite your path to power and truth. Until next time, keep seeking, keep growing, keep shining. Have you ever halted, even for a trembling breath, to ponder why certain truths about men and women lie entombed? choked by silence, mocked as blasphemy, or swept away in torrents of indignation. Why do we grip so tightly to the frail delusion that the sexes are mere vessels, shaped only by culture's hand, when the ceaseless churn of human nature, the sprawling tapestry of history, and the shadowed depths of the psyche howl a different song? Carl Jung, a fearless navigator of the soul's uncharted seas, refused to flinch from these enigmas. He dove into the collective unconscious, that vast, roiling cauldron of shared human essence, and emerged with a vision of men and women as bearers of eternal archetypes, the Anima and the Animus, twin currents surging through our fractured being. For Jung, women embody the Anima, a primal swirling force of intuition, connection, and unfathomable mystery, while men channel the Animus, a restless blaze of reason, assertion, and outward conquest. Yet the Anima is no tame spirit. It cradles light and shadow in a fierce embrace, weaving a web of power, enigma, and peril that both lures and repels. Within this archetype lies not just beauty, but secrets. Hidden corners, veiled wounds, and a darkness women guard with silent ferocity. These aren't passing traits or social stains. They're the raw, pulsing roots of something ancient, something we've smothered beneath layers of denial. Jung's gaze tears through our fragile illusions, forcing us to confront the brutal, radiant, and haunting reality of women. Their unseen depths, their shrouded dominion, their buried chaos. If he pierced the veil, what does this reveal about their place in our broken world? And what abyss yawns if we refuse to face their hidden truths? Jung didn't wield a blunt cudgel. His philosophy is a lantern, casting beams into the shadows we dread to name. He scorned shallow reductions, women as mere instinct, men as ambition's thralls, and charted the archetypes that thrum beneath our flesh, timeless patterns etched into the bedrock of the collective unconscious. His insights into gender weren't forged in spite or fleeting scorn, but in decades of sifting through the silt of dreams, unraveling the myths that echo across epochs, and tracing the symbols that tether humanity to its primal core. Yet his words strike like a lash. In an age drunk on the creed of sameness, Jung's assertion that men and women bear distinct psychic energies, intertwined yet unyielding, rings like rebellion. Women, through the Anima, are the sentinels of the soul's unseen rivers. They divine truths beyond speech, weave life's threads with bonds that defy reason, and wield a depth that intellect stumbles to fathom. But this power is shadowed, elusive, wild, a tempest that can mend or maim. Men, propelled by the Animus, wrestle chaos into order, chasing clarity through toil and triumph. These aren't trite masks. They're the breath of eternity in our divided bones. So we must dare to ask, are women's mysteries and men's drives mere fables we've spun, or do they rise from a well we can't cap? For Jung, humanity is a sundered whole, split between Anima and Animus, each sex bearing treasures the other can only mirror. Men, under the Animus's iron yoke, thrust outward, erecting empires of brick and blood, crafting philosophies to tame the void, waging wars to carve their names into time's stone. Their hunger fuels progress, but it casts them adrift, forever seeking a peace that slips through their grasp like mist. Women, rooted in the Anima, wield a subtler, deeper force. They anchor life's storm, stitching its chaos with relationships, communities, and the quiet arts of being. Yet Jung saw the Anima's duality. Its nurturing touch can heal, but its shadow can bind. Its warmth can guide, but its chill can cage. Men chase the heavens, building spires to defy death. Women hold the earth, their influence a ripple that shapes the unseen, sometimes a snare that grips too tight. This isn't a clash of value, it's a polarity of essence. The Animus ignites creation, the Anima sustains life, and, at its darkest, subverts it. When we deny these tides, do we fracture the fragile dance that binds us? The Anima's reign in women, Jung argued, is no loud clarion. It's a whisper that shatters crowns. Where men dominate through muscle or mind, women command through the psyche's twilight. Their intuition pierces masks like a blade. Their empathy bends wills without breaking them. Their beauty, a transient, piercing shaft, shifts fates with a glance. But this power has teeth. Jung saw the Anima's shadow, the seductress who lures to doom, the manipulator who spins webs unseen, the nurturer who smothers in her clasp. These aren't mere slips, they're archetypes unleashed, dark sisters of the Anima's grace. Look to history. Cleopatra, her charm a poison that toppled Rome. Delilah, her whispers stripping Samson bare. Anne Boleyn, her allure a spark that raised a dynasty's peace. Or the unnamed, mothers whose love became chains, lovers whose tears turned to knives, sisters whose silence wielded guilt like a scourge. Their might isn't the hammer, but the thread that pulls it, the gaze that unravels thrones. Men forge the world's bones, its laws, its engines, its towering dreams, but women shape its spirit, often from the edges. Their influence a current too subtle to chart, yet too fierce to defy. Power isn't just the scepter, it's the shadow that sways it. Can we face that this darkness still prowls our days, silent yet supreme? Time gouges their divide like a chasm. Men, Jung noted, are slaves to the future, haunted by legacies, goals, the eternal what might be. The Animus drives them to trade the now for the then, to sacrifice sleep, health, even love for the ghost of something grander. They're the dreamers of distant summits, often deaf to the whispers of the present. Women, bound to the Anima, dwell in the moment's pulse, nurturing, balancing, meeting life's demands with a rootedness that men might dismiss as small but Jung revered as vast. Yet this presence hides a labyrinth. Their focus can harden into obsession, their care twist into possession, their harmony shift into a yoke that binds. Jung didn't shy from this. The Anima's immediacy can be a balm or a bane, a gift or a grip. Men stake their lives on abstractions, scaling cliffs of thought. Women cling to the tangible, sometimes clutching it with claws that won't yield, their hands weaving cradles as often as cages. One shapes history's sweep, the other its rhythm, and at times its fetters. Is it strength to seize the now, or folly to let it rule? Jung held the question like a flame, daring us to feel its burn. Love for Jung is no cheap slight. It's a sacred forge, a collision of Anima and Animus in their desperate reach for wholeness. He didn't shrink it to nature's whim, but exalted it as the psyche's quest. Attraction isn't chance. It's the soul's cry for its lost half. Men drawn to the Anima's warmth and riddle, women to the Animus's strength and sight. But this bond is a tempest as much as a bridge. The Anima in women can enchant and engulf, luring men into depths they can't swim, while their own hunger for the Animus can chain them to mirages of power they can't hold. Love isn't calm, it's a mirror, flashing our shadows as fiercely as our light. Jung knew it fades not because it's false, but because we flee its weight, chasing its shimmer instead of its soul. It's a road to the self, a gauntlet of growth. The Anima's mystery promises infinity, but its darkness demands blood. Men lost in its undertow, women torn by its cost. Think of Tristan and Isolde, their passion a pyre, or Penelope, her fidelity a trap for suitors and self, or Romeo and Juliet, her Anima a flame that consumed them both. Do we dare see love as a wound that heals, not a balm that blinds? minds. Jung's stare into women's shadow, their dark side, is where his genius blazes. He didn't recoil from the Anima's chaos, its irrational floods, its emotional gales, its silent tyrannies. In Psychology of the Unconscious, he charted how the Anima, when buried or unseen, erupts as caprice, vengeance, or a grip that crushes what it claims to cherish. Women, tied to this archetype, can wield their relational mastery as a scourge, guilt a whip that stings, silence a knife that cuts, affection a leash that binds. Their mysteries aren't just alluring veils, they're labyrinths that trap, whirlwinds that wreck. Jung saw this in myth. The siren's song luring ships to splintered graves, the witch Circe turning men to swine, the goddess Eris sowing discord with a single apple. Or in life, the mother whose love devours independence, the wife whose tears drown dissent, the friend whose loyalty masks control. These aren't exceptions. They're the Anima's feral edge, raw and relentless. To know women, Jung pressed us to face this shadow, not to damn it, but to dance with it. Only then can their light, their power to mend, to intuit, to bind, shine without twisting into ruin. Their darkness isn't a stain to scrub, it's a force to wrestle. Are we bold enough to meet its eyes? The Anima's mysteries plunge deeper still, a chasm Jung only grazed, and here lies the heart of what women conceal. In Symbols of Transformation, he wrote of their tie to the primal, birth, death, the cycles that hum beneath civilization's drone. Women, he hinted, are nearer the collective unconscious than men, their intuition a wire to its depths, their dreams a kaleidoscope of symbols men strain to read. This closeness makes them seers of the unseen, but also conduits of its anarchy. Their emotions, Jung observed, can shift like the sea, still one moment, raging the next. Not from frailty, but from a visceral link to life's raw core. We label it madness, hysteria, weakness. Jung called it the Anima's tongue, speaking truths intellect can't cage. But what do they hide in this depth? Their secrecy, he suggested, is a fortress built to shield what's sacred or to bury what's broken. In Ion, he casts women as the great mother, creator and devourer, life and doom entwined. Think of Demeter, her grief starving the earth, or Kali, her dance a slaughter. This duality defies mastery, slipping through the Animus's net. Their power isn't just sway, it's a tide that can sweep all away. Or consider the everyday, the woman whose silence unnerves a room, whose glance unravels a lie, whose mood shifts the air like a storm's edge. These are the veils they draw, over fears, over wounds, over a chaos they dare not unleash. Do we dare swim in this current, or do we cling to the shore? The corners they conceal stretch further, into realms Jung barely named but felt. Women's capacity for vengeance, he noted, can burn colder than men's, less a blaze of fists, more a slow poison of the soul. In the archetypes and the collective unconscious, he hints at their knack for holding grudges not as outbursts, but as buried embers, flaring years later with surgical precision. Their empathy, a gift, can invert, reading others not to heal, but to wound where it cuts deepest. Their relational web, meant to connect, can tighten into a snare. Think of the friend who knows your secrets and wields them, the lover who binds with invisible threads, the mother who guards her child's soul until it withers. Jung saw this in the femme fatale archetype. Carmen, her dance a death knell. Salome, her desire a head on a platter. Medusa, her gaze a stone curse. These aren't mere tales. They're the Anima's hidden claws, the secrets women cloak in silence. What do they guard? Their vulnerability, perhaps. The fear of being seen too clearly. The dread of losing the power their mystery grants. or their rage, a quiet fury at a world that demands they nurture while it binds them. Their mysteries aren't just depth, they're danger, a riddle that kills if misread. Yet Jung didn't judge. He beckoned us to integrate, to see the shadow as part of the whole. Their chaos is their strength, their darkness their crown. Can we face it without flinching? But the Anima's hidden corners run deeper still, into the secrets women bury even from themselves. Jung saw their tie to the unconscious as a double-edged blade. They feel its currents more keenly, but they also bear its weight. In the Red Book, he wrestled with his own Anima, a figure of beauty and terror, revealing how women might harbor inner voices they dare not name, fears of inadequacy, of being too much or too little, of a power they can't control. Their secrecy isn't just a shield, it's a tune for the parts they reject, the anger they swallow, the desires they stifle, the wildness they leash. Think of the woman who smiles while her heart seethes, who comforts while her soul screams, who loves while her shadow plots. Jung saw this in the archetype of the Dark Mother, Hecate, lurking at crossroads with her unseen hounds, or Lilith, cast out for her refusal to bow. These figures embody what women hide, a rebellion they cloak, a strength they fear, a darkness they bury beneath duty. In life, it's the wife who masks her resentment with devotion, the daughter who buries her defiance in silence, the friend who conceals her envy with praise. What drives this concealment? Shame, perhaps, or survival, a need to wield power without breaking the fragile order they uphold. Do we dare peel back these layers, or do we let them fester unseen? The Anima's mysteries deepen further when we probe what women shield from the world. Jung hinted at their role as keepers of the sacred, intuition as a priestess's gift, emotion as a ritual fire. But this sanctity comes with a price. They guard it by hiding their own fractures. In Psychology and Alchemy, he links the Anima to the alchemical vessel, holding life's chaos but cracking under its strain. Women, he suggested, conceal their fragility, not just physical, but psychic. The terror of losing those they bind, the exhaustion of feeling too much, the dread of their own depths. Think of the mother who hides her tears to seem strong, the lover who buries her doubts to keep peace, the leader who masks her uncertainty with grace. Or in myth, Persephone, her descent a secret kept from the sun, Isis veiling her grief to rebuild Osiris. These aren't just stories, they're the Anima's silent burden, the corners women seal shut. Why? To protect? Yes, but also to preserve the illusion of control, to keep the world from seeing the chaos they cradle. Their power isn't just influence, it's a mask over a storm. Can we bear to lift it, or do we fear what lies beneath? The Anima's hidden recesses stretch into the unspeakable, the corners women guard with their lives. Jung saw their tie to the unconscious as a wellspring of creation, but also of destruction they dare not loose. In Mysterium Coniunctionis, he explores the Anima as a bridge to the divine, yet a gate to the infernal. Women, he implied, conceal a primal rage, a fury at being bound, at being seen as less, at bearing life's weight while men chase its glory. This rage festers in silence, cloaked in smiles, buried in acts of care. Think of the woman who serves while her soul rebels, who nurtures while her heart curses, who waits while her shadow sharpens its claws. Jung saw this in the terrible mother archetype, Tiamat, her chaos birthing the world only to destroy it. Echidna, mother of monsters lurking in shadow. In life, it's the grandmother whose bitterness seeps through her tales, the sister whose kindness hides a grudge, the stranger whose eyes flash with unspoken fire. What do they hide? their power's cost, the toll of holding life together, the scars of bending to a world that demands their light but fears their dark. Do we dare name this fury, or do we let it simmer in the void? Society, Jung held, rises or falls on the dance of Anima and Animus. Women's Anima brings unity, knitting families, softening rifts, threading humanity's spirit through time. Men's Animus brings form, taming wildness, stretching horizons, driving us skyward. But the Anima's shadow can fracture this. Its emotional pull can swamp reason, its need for peace can stifle risk, its mysteries can sow doubt. Today, women lead wars in boardrooms, men rock cradles, yet the archetypes endure, flexing but firm. The old strains persist, politics swayed by pathos, relationships choked by unspoken reins, cultures wrestling with the Anima's dual breath. Has this shift steadied us, or unleashed the Anima's wilder waves? Jung might say we're still groping to balance, to let women's depths enrich without drowning. The Anima doesn't fade. It haunts our songs, our battles, our quiet terrors, a shadow we can't exile. Their secrets, their hidden corners, ripple through unseen hands shaping what we dare not see. Jung's vision endures because it rends our flesh. We preach sameness, but he saw distinction, not as fetters but as gates to the soul's expanse. The Anima in women, luminous, shadowed, untamable, holds truths we've chained in darkness. Are their depths, their darkness, their rule mere habits we've bred, or do they roar from a source we can't quench? Jung leaned toward the eternal, sculpted by culture but never its thrall. Deny this, he'd warn, and we reap ruin. Relationships buckle under false veils, societies lurch in forced fusion, individuals drift from their moorings. Women's mysteries aren't knots to untie, but storms to ride, with awe, with fear, with a will to see their shadow as fiercely as their dawn. Men and women may never meld in mind, in want, in essence. Their psychic seas run too deep, their shadows too vast. To stand as one, we must first stand apart, unveiled, unyielding, unafraid of the void that yawns between, and the secrets it whispers. The power of the subconscious. Those who look outward dream, those who look inward awaken. Carl Jung once delivered a famous statement that serves as a wake-up call for us all. Those who look outward dream, those who look inward awaken. To him, the human mind is like a massive iceberg floating on the ocean. The small visible part above the water is consciousness, where you store the thoughts, decisions, and memories you can clearly recognize. But the much larger portion, submerged beneath the icy waves, is the subconscious, a vast, mysterious realm holding repressed desires, unresolved emotions, and long-forgotten fears. The subconscious isn't just a storage space for buried experiences. According to Jung, it's also home to archetypes, universal patterns or symbols shared by all of humanity, shaped over thousands of years of evolution. These archetypes are like spiritual DNA, influencing how we think, feel, and act, without us even realizing it. When someone keeps popping into your mind persistently, it's likely they've unintentionally triggered something deep within your subconscious. This isn't a random occurrence or a trick of the brain. Jung believed it's a signal, an invitation from your inner self urging you to acknowledge parts of yourself you typically ignore. For instance, a person who repeatedly occupies your thoughts might embody an archetype, like Anima, the feminine aspect in a man's psyche, or Animus, the masculine aspect in a woman's psyche. They're not just a specific individual, they symbolize your internal quest for balance within your soul. Moreover, Jung emphasized that we often engage in projection, attributing unacknowledged or unaccepted parts of ourselves onto others. When you're obsessed with someone, it's not entirely about them as you might assume. Rather, it reflects a part of you crying out for recognition. It could be a quality you admire but haven't expressed in yourself, like confidence or creativity, or a fear you're avoiding, like feeling inadequate or dreading rejection. Think about this for a moment. Have you ever noticed that the person you can't stop thinking about possesses something you feel is missing in your own life? Maybe they live freely and fearlessly, while you're bound by rules and expectations. Or perhaps they irritate you with their arrogance, but deep down, you wish you could be that self-assured without admitting it. According to Jung, these thoughts are a gateway to self-discovery. The shadow, facing yourself. The hidden part of your mind. Jung referred to the concealed part of the mind, the part we deny, overlook, or suppress, as the shadow. This is where aspects that don't fit the ideal image you want to project about yourself reside. It might hold fears, like the fear of failure or abandonment, wounds, like the memory of a rejection, forbidden desires, like the longing to be noticed or loved, or even untapped strengths you haven't dared to embrace, like leadership potential or extraordinary creativity. When someone keeps appearing in your thoughts, it might not be because they're inherently significant in your life, but because they've unconsciously awakened a piece of your shadow. They act like a mirror, reflecting things you haven't dared to face. For example, you admire their confidence, the way they walk into a room and command everyone's attention, but you constantly feel small, shy, and hesitant to speak up. They might represent a quality you crave but haven't dared to express, perhaps because you fear judgment or failure. Or maybe you're annoyed by their arrogance, the way they always seem to think they're better than others. Deep down, you might have a similar tendency toward pride, but you suppress it because you're afraid of being seen as selfish or unlikable. Jung believed that strong emotional reactions to others, whether positive or negative, often say less about them and more about you. They're a mirror reflecting your inner self. He argued that we can't become whole unless we integrate our shadow. Ignoring or repressing it only makes it stronger, manifesting in negative ways like baseless jealousy, unexplained anger, or a lingering sense of dissatisfaction you can't pinpoint. But if you dare to confront and embrace your shadow, it ceases to be an enemy. Instead, it becomes a source of strength and maturity. For instance, if you admit that you too want to be noticed like that person, you might start speaking up in meetings or sharing your ideas without fear. When you integrate your shadow, you not only understand yourself better, you live more authentically and fully. Anima and Animus, the inner relationship, the journey to self-integration. Jung introduced two crucial archetypes in analytical psychology, Anima and Animus. These are the gender-opposite aspects within each person, serving as bridges between consciousness and the subconscious, guiding us toward inner balance. Anima, the feminine within men. Have you ever felt an intense attraction to someone without understanding why? It might be your anima, the unconscious feminine aspect in a man's psyche, speaking up. The anima represents emotions, intuition, sensitivity, and the ability to connect with the inner world. When fully developed, it allows men to access their emotions deeply, enhancing empathy, creativity, and their understanding of women. But when immature, it can wreak havoc on their emotional lives. Imagine meeting a mysterious woman with a strong intuition, captivating you to the point where you can't look away. She seems to understand you better than you understand yourself, as if she can see through thoughts you've never voiced. But in reality, this might not be entirely about her. You could be projecting your anima onto her, drawn to qualities your subconscious yearns for, but hasn't cultivated within you, like sensitivity, the ability to listen to your heart, or free-flowing creativity. You might recall past instances where you were similarly drawn to women with exceptional sensitivity, deep understanding, and something distinctly different from those around them. But then, when you entered a relationship, the magic faded. You idealized her, believing she was the perfect archetype, the one to fill your voids. Gradually, you realized you didn't truly know her. You were chasing a shadow from your subconscious, a part of your anima you hadn't faced within yourself. When your anima remains unintegrated, you're prone to intense but chaotic emotions. You might plunge into complicated relationships swept away by passionate infatuation, yet unable to control your feelings. You idealize the other person, placing them on an unrealistic pedestal, only to feel disappointed when they can't meet your expectations. But when you recognize that the anima isn't just an external image, but a part of you, everything shifts. You stop blindly chasing those external figures. Instead, you cultivate feminine qualities within yourself, like intuition, sensitivity, and emotional awareness. You might try journaling to better understand your feelings, meditating to connect with your inner world, or simply learning to listen to others without rushing to fix things. Then, while you may still be drawn to beauty and mystery, you no longer idealize or overburden others with expectations. You see them for who they truly are, not projections of your unfinished self. You learn to love without clinging, connect without depending, and most importantly, you find peace within yourself. A man with a mature anima doesn't shy away from empathy. He listens, understands others' emotions without needing to control or dominate, and values women not for fitting his desires, but for their unique, independent selves. Animus, the masculine within women. Conversely, if a woman feels powerfully drawn to a man who's strong, visionary, and resolute, it could be a sign of her animus, the unconscious masculine aspect in a woman's psyche. The animus embodies decisiveness, intellect, and confident control. Picture meeting a man with a commanding presence. He walks with assurance, speaks with clarity, and seems to master every situation effortlessly. There's an inexplicable allure, not just in his looks or style, but in his decisiveness, intelligence, and the potent energy he exudes. You look at him with admiration, perhaps even feeling small in his presence. But as the relationship deepens, you notice yourself starting to rely on his qualities. You seek his guidance, expect his protection, and feel something missing when he's not around. When the animus is immature, it can lead women to dependency, searching for wholeness outside themselves rather than within. You might lean on him for decisions, safety, or validation of your worth. Yet, when your animus matures, everything transforms. You no longer fall for the allure of dominating, powerful men. Instead, you discover strength within yourself. You don't need someone to chart your life's course because you've forged your own clear vision. You learn to say no when necessary, set boundaries, and defend your rights without fear of displeasing others. And something fascinating happens. Your tastes evolve. You're no longer captivated by men who are overwhelmingly assertive or commanding. Instead, you find yourself drawn to those who are gentle, meticulous, and organized. Men who don't prioritize career or power above all else, but relish precision, order, and a balanced pace of life. You see beauty in their stability, patience, and subtlety. The man who stirs your heart isn't the one who leads or controls, but the one who's calm, dedicated to his work and personal life, with a rich inner world he doesn't flaunt. What does this mean? It's a sign that your animus has matured. You no longer seek strength externally because you've cultivated it internally. You don't need a man as a crutch because you stand firm on your own. Attraction shifts from surface power or dominance to refinement, discipline, and soulful depth. In this state, you enter relationships not out of admiration or a desire for shelter, but from equality, a resonance between two free individuals. You're unafraid to stand alone, make decisions, or seek your animus externally. You know your worth, trust yourself, and don't need anyone else to affirm it for you. Synchronicity. When the universe speaks meaningful coincidences, beyond the concepts of the shadow, anima, and animus, Jung introduced a captivating phenomenon, synchronicity, meaningful synchronicity. These are events that seem random, unlinked by typical cause and effect, yet carry profound significance, as if the universe or your subconscious is sending you a message. Have you ever experienced a strange moment like this? You think of someone, a long-lost friend you haven't contacted in years, and moments later they text or call you. Or you keep seeing their name on a billboard, hear someone mention them in a random conversation, or notice a number, song, or image tied to them recurring throughout your day. According to Jung, these aren't mere coincidences. They're synchronicity, meaningful signs, like an invitation to delve into your soul and uncover lessons yet to be learned. Jung believed that synchronicity often emerges at pivotal moments in your life, when you're undergoing a major transition, need guidance, or your subconscious is trying to bring something from the shadows into conscious light. For example, you're wrestling with a big decision, like whether to switch jobs, and suddenly spot an inspiring quote online. Don't fear change. You may lose something good, but you'll gain something greater. It's exactly what you needed to hear at that moment. Or a friend you haven't thought of in years pops into your mind, and the next day they reach out to catch up. Instead of dismissing these occurrences as random, Jung urged you to reflect. Why is this happening right now? What does it reflect within me? Synchronicity is like an inner mirror, showing you what you're projecting onto the external world. If someone keeps recurring in your thoughts, or you repeatedly encounter signs related to them in reality, it might not be a fluke. It's a nudge from the universe or your subconscious, prompting you to pay attention to something vital, a lesson, an emotion, or a part of yourself you need to confront. Decoding the subconscious message. 3 steps to understand yourself. If someone persistently occupies your mind, don't brush it off as random or a pointless obsession. See it as an opportunity to explore yourself through these 3 simple steps. 1. What are your emotions? How do you feel each time you think of them? Emotions are the key to unlocking hidden parts of your subconscious that your conscious mind hasn't yet grasped. Admiration. They might possess qualities you long to develop in yourself, like confidence, creativity, or authenticity. Irritation. They could reflect something you unconsciously reject in yourself, like arrogance, selfishness, or fear of judgment. Intense attraction. They might represent your anima or animus, a part of you needing integration to become whole. Pay attention to your emotions. They're like a compass, guiding you toward what you need to explore. 2. What aspect of you do they represent? Ask yourself, what do they embody that I want but haven't achieved? Freedom, courage, or the ability to connect with others, perhaps? What fear do they trigger in me? Failure, rejection, or not being good enough? What part of myself have I forgotten that they remind me of? Maybe stifled creativity or emotions you're afraid to express? Instead of fixating on them, view them as a mirror reflecting your inner world. They're not the center of the story. You are. 3. Action. Transform yourself. This isn't about changing them or controlling your thoughts. It's about transforming yourself. Once you grasp the message your subconscious is sending, you can work with your shadow, accept the parts you've denied. If you're jealous of their success, acknowledge it and turn it into motivation to grow. Develop missing qualities. If you admire their confidence, step out of your comfort zone, speak up in a meeting, or try something new. Let go of the obsession. Once you learn the lesson they bring, they'll stop dominating your mind. Their presence will fade as you find answers within. Conclusion. It's all about you discovering yourself through others. Carl Jung once said something profoundly insightful. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. When you understand your subconscious, you gain control over your thoughts and emotions instead of letting them steer you blindly. The next time someone lingers in your mind persistently, don't ignore it or try to chase them away. Treat it as an invitation to explore your inner world. Those who keep recurring in your thoughts aren't just random characters in your life story. They hold the keys to your personal growth, helping you see yourself more clearly, revealing what you desire, what you fear, and what you could become. Our minds are like treasure maps, with every thought and feeling a path to self-discovery. So take a deep breath. Listen to the voice deep within and uncover what your subconscious is trying to tell you. You might be surprised to find that the answer doesn't lie with them. It's always been within you. If this journey resonates with you, share it with those around you. And if someone pops into your mind while reading this, send it to them. Perhaps they're going through the same thing, and this is the sign they need to start their own exploration. See you in the next journey, where we'll continue delving into the mysteries of the human mind. The notion that life really does begin at 40, while not a verbatim quote from Carl Jung, aligns seamlessly with his vision of human development as a profound, multi-layered journey of the psyche. Jung, a pioneer who mapped the soul's terrain, saw life not as a mere chronological arc, but as a transformative process, where each phase carries distinct psychological weight. For men, age 40 emerges as a critical juncture, not a decline into irrelevance, but a threshold where superficial pursuits give way to a deeper quest for authenticity, meaning, and wholeness. This isn't about physical prime fading, it's about the psyche awakening to its fuller potential. Through individuation, the shadow, archetypes, midlife dynamics, and the interplay of conscious and unconscious forces, Jung offers a framework to see 40 as a rebirth, especially for men conditioned by societal roles. Below, I'll dissect this idea with exhaustive depth, using specific male examples, and then propose optimized Jungian solutions to navigate the psychological complexities of this pivotal age. 1. Age 40 and the start of individuation analysis. Carl Jung's concept of individuation. The process of integrating the ego, shadow, archetypes, and unconscious into a unified, authentic self is the linchpin of his psychology and the heart of why he might see 40 as life's true beginning. For men, the first half of life, spanning adolescence to the late 30s, is a crucible of conscious effort dominated by the ego. This is a time of external conquest. They pursue careers, forge relationships, and establish social standing, often embodying archetypes like the warrior or provider. The ego constructs a persona, a public mask of masculinity, tailored to societal demands: the driven professional, the reliable husband, the competitive achiever. In this phase, inner conflicts, doubts, unorthodox desires, or existential questions are suppressed to maintain this facade, as men strive to prove their worth in a world that rewards tangible success. Jung elaborates this trajectory in The Stages of Life, 1930, noting that the morning of life is about adaptation, building structures, meeting expectations, and securing a foothold. By 40, however, a profound shift emerges, which he terms the transition to life's afternoon. The ego's relentless pursuit, promotions, wealth, status, begins to wane in significance, either because these goals are achieved or because they no longer fill the void within. The unconscious stirs, whispering through restlessness, discontent, or a yearning for something undefined. Jung saw this not as a collapse, but as the dawn of individuation, a psychological rebirth where men move from living for others, society, family, to living for themselves, their deeper, truer selves. Take Andrew, a 41-year-old construction foreman. For 2 decades, he poured concrete and climbed ranks, earning a reputation as the rock of his crew. He bought a house, raised 2 kids, and drove a pickup truck, symbols of a man's life. At 40, though, cracks appeared. He felt numb despite his accomplishments. The long hours and back pain didn't justify the emptiness. One day, he stumbled across an old guitar in his attic, a relic from his teenage band days, and started playing again. Soon, he enrolled in a music theory class and began writing songs about his blue-collar life. Jung would interpret this as individuation breaking through. Andrew's ego-driven identity, foreman, was giving way to a soul-driven one. Musician, storyteller. The guitar wasn't just a pastime. It was a symbolic bridge to a suppressed part of his psyche, a creative spark he'd buried under years of practicality. Jung argued that 40 is ripe for this shift, because men have amassed enough experience, successes, failures, scars, to question their path with maturity. Andrew's younger self might have scoffed at music as a waste of time. At 40, he had the perspective to see its worth. This isn't regression, it's progression, a move from a fragmented, role-bound existence to a holistic one. In Psychological Types, 1921, Jung notes that midlife often brings a reversal of values, where what once mattered, status, yields to what truly fulfills self-expression. For men, 40 begins life because it's when the ego's tyranny softens, and the unconscious, rich with potential, gains a voice, initiating a journey toward wholeness that redefines their very being. Another example. Brian, a 40-year-old accountant, lived for numbers, tax seasons, bonuses, a corner office. At 40, after a promotion left him oddly flat, he took up woodworking, crafting furniture in his garage. Jung would see this as individuation unfolding. Brian's shift from spreadsheets to sawdust wasn't escape. It was a reclaiming of a tactile, creative self he'd ignored. For men, 40 is a genesis because it's when they can trade the script of should, careerist, for the story of am, creator. A psychological awakening Jung deems the essence of a life truly lived. Optimized Jungian solution. To optimize this onset of individuation, men must engage it deliberately, with a structured yet flexible approach rooted in Jung's methods. First, depth psychotherapy is essential. Weekly sessions with a Jungian analyst can unearth what lies beneath the ego's surface. Andrew could explore why the guitar calls him, perhaps linking it to a youthful dream of freedom stifled by manly duties. Brian might discover woodworking taps a primal need to shape something tangible, countering his abstract career. Second, journaling becomes a daily ritual, 15 minutes each morning, listing what sparks joy, e.g. strumming feels alive, sanding wood calms me, versus what drains it, e.g. meetings suffocate me. Jung saw writing as a mirror to the soul. This clarifies the shift from external to internal values. Third, solitude. A monthly weekend retreat, phone off, in nature or quiet space, quiets the ego's noise, letting the unconscious speak. Andrew might sit by a river, guitar in hand, feeling its rhythm. Brian could plane wood in silence, sensing his purpose. Fourth, symbolic acts anchor the process. Andrew playing a song for his kids or Brian gifting a table to his wife are rituals of integration, blending past roles with new truths. Finally, consistent action, dedicating 2 hours weekly to music or crafting, builds momentum. Jung emphasized gradual commitment. Men must treat this as a sacred discipline, not a whim. By embracing this restlessness as a call to wholeness, therapy weekly, journaling daily, retreating monthly, men turn 40 into a vibrant beginning, living not for applause but for authenticity. 2. Confronting the shadow at midlife analysis. The shadow, in Jung's framework, is the hidden underbelly of the psyche, those traits, emotions, or desires men repress to fit societal molds. Fear, vulnerability, anger, or unacceptable yearnings. For men, the first half of life is a performance of control. They craft a persona of strength, the unflappable boss, the stoic father, the tireless worker, shoving the shadow deep to preserve this image. Tears are weakness, doubt is failure, creativity is frivolous, or so the script goes. This suppression isn't conscious defiance, it's survival in a world that prizes manliness over wholeness. At 40, Jung observed a reckoning, as detailed in Psychology and Alchemy, 1944. When external markers, career peaks, family stability, either solidify or fade, the shadow grows restless, seeping through cracks in the persona. It might emerge as irritability, regret, or a sudden fascination with what was once off-limits. Jung saw this not as a threat, but as an opportunity. midlife offers the maturity to face this dark mirror without crumbling. Ignoring it risks stagnation, bitterness, addiction, or a hollow life. Embracing it sparks renewal, turning buried flaws into fuel for growth. Consider Jack, a 42-year-old high school principal. For 20 years he embodied authority, strict, composed, a pillar for students and staff. At 40 he felt caged, snapping at colleagues over trivialities. In therapy he unearthed a shadow he'd denied, envy for his carefree brother, a traveling photographer whom he'd mocked as irresponsible. Jack started hiking with a camera, capturing landscapes, a soft pursuit he'd once scorned. Jung would see this as life beginning. Jack's shadow wasn't a foe, but a guide, revealing a yearning for freedom he'd buried under duty. The camera didn't weaken him, it enriched him, integrating his disciplined self with a wandering soul. Jung argued that 40 is ideal for this confrontation because men have the resilience to handle the shadow's intensity. Jack's younger self might have doubled down on control. At 40, he could bear the discomfort of envy and transform it. In 2 essays on analytical psychology, 1917, Jung notes that the shadow holds not just flaws, but untapped potential, creativity, passion, depth. For Jack, photography wasn't regression, it was reclamation. Another case. Steve, a 41-year-old ex-soldier, lived by toughness. At 40, after a divorce, he felt lost, haunted by guilt over past aggression. He began boxing, not to fight, but to channel that energy, and wrote letters to his ex, seeking peace. Jung would see this as a new start. Steve's shadow, anger, shame, became a teacher, guiding him to balance force with reflection. For men, 40 begins life because it's when the shadow shifts from a silent saboteur to a loud ally, if they dare engage it. This isn't about erasing the past, it's about weaving its darkness into a fuller present. A psychological alchemy Jung celebrated as the path to wholeness. Optimized Jungian solution. Jung's optimal approach to shadow work is systematic and immersive. First, active imagination, 20 minutes daily, lets men personify the shadow, Jack's carefree wanderer, Steve's angry warrior, and ask, what do you want? Answers, freedom, forgiveness, spark actions, hiking, writing. Second, dream analysis, a nightly log reviewed weekly with man and his symbols, decodes shadow signals. Jack's dream of a locked shed might mean trapped creativity. Steve's of a battlefield could signal unresolved guilt. Third, creative expression, 2 hours weekly, photography, boxing, externalizes the shadow, making it concrete. Jung saw art as a vessel for the unconscious. Consistency is key. Fourth, confession. Monthly talks with a trusted friend or therapist releases shame, Jack's envy, Steve's regret, lightening the load. Fifth, ritual integration. Jack framing a photo, Steve burning a letter, symbolizes acceptance. Men must commit, daily imagination, weekly creativity, monthly talks, turning 40 into a transformative beginning where the shadow fuels a life of depth and courage. 3. Archetypes and the shift at 40 analysis. Jung's archetypes, universal patterns in the collective unconscious, guide men through life's phases. In youth, the hero archetype dominates. Men conquer obstacles, win accolades, or build legacies. A 33-year-old might grind for a sales bonus, lift weights for a chiseled physique, or work overtime to buy a house. Classic hero quests. This phase, detailed in Symbols of Transformation, 1912, is about external triumph, aligning with societal ideals of masculinity. Strength, victory, provision. At 40, Jung observed a profound pivot, elaborated in Modern Man in Search of a Soul, 1933. The hero recedes, and archetypes like the seeker, quest for meaning, or wise old man, inner wisdom, rise. This isn't failure, it's maturation, a shift from ego-driven feats to soul-driven exploration. The psyche, tired of conquest, craves depth, connection, insight, legacy beyond trophies. Jung saw this as a natural arc. Midlife redirects energy inward, aligning men with the collective unconscious's timeless currents. Take Eric, a 43-year-old former stockbroker. He thrived on trades, a hero mastering Wall Street's chaos. At 40, After a market crash dented his pride, he quit, studied meditation, and began teaching financial literacy to teens. Jung would see this as a transition to the wise old man, sharing knowledge over chasing profit. Eric's younger self lived for the scoreboard. At 40, he lives for impact. Another example. Luke, 41, a gym trainer, swapped powerlifting for yoga instruction after a knee injury. From hero, muscle, to seeker, balance, he reflects Jung's view that 40 begins life, when men trade shallow wins for profound growth. Jung argued that 40 is when these archetypes emerge because men have exhausted the hero's external battles, gaining the perspective to embrace subtler roles. In The Archetypes and the Collective Unconscious, 1934, he notes that midlife aligns with humanity's deeper patterns, wisdom, not warfare. For Eric and Luke, this isn't retreat, it's evolution, a beginning where life shifts from proving to understanding, from muscle to mind. Optimized Jungian solution. Jung's optimal method engages these archetypes deliberately. First, mythic study. An hour weekly with texts like The Hero with 1,000 Faces or Jung's Archetypes connects men to the seeker or wise old man. Eric could read about sages, Luke about seekers, grounding their shifts. Second, mentorship, monthly teaching. Eric's classes, Luke's yoga, embodies these roles, channeling energy outward. Third, symbolic practice, weekly rituals. Eric meditating, Luke stretching, reinforce the archetype physically. Jung saw symbols as psyche shapers, consistency matters. Fourth, artistic reflection, drawing or writing the archetype, e.g. Luke sketching a yogi, deepens connection, 2 hours weekly. Fifth, group discussion, bi-monthly men's circles, explores this transition collectively. Men must commit, weekly study, monthly teaching, daily symbols, making 40 a rich beginning where archetypes guide a life of meaning. 4. The midlife crisis as an invitation analysis. Jung reframed the midlife crisis as a summons from the unconscious, not a descent into despair, as explored in The Structure and Dynamics of the Psyche, 1960. For men at 40, this often arises from disruption. Kids leave home, careers plateau, bodies weaken, gray hair, creaky joints. Society paints this as loss, youth fading, vigor waning, but Jung saw it as gain, a chance to unearth what's been buried beneath decades of duty. The unconscious, silent in youth's hustle, now speaks loudly through dreams, unease, or a nagging, "Is this it?" This isn't random, it's purposeful. Jung believed midlife crises are the psyche's way of shaking men awake, urging them to shift from external roles, provider-achiever, to internal truths. In The Development of Personality, 1934, he notes that 40 brings a second puberty, not physical but psychic, where suppressed needs demand attention. Ignoring this risks despair. Keeping it ignites renewal. Example, Matt, a 40-year-old car salesman, felt unmoored when his daughter moved out. He dreamt of a sinking boat, a Jungian symbol of a foundering old self. Rather than splurge on a motorcycle, a cliché dodge, he took up sailing lessons, volunteered at a youth center, and started a blog about fatherhood's lessons. Jung would call this a rebirth. Matt's boat wasn't sinking, it was sailing into new waters, from dad to seeker. Another case, Phil, 41, a factory worker, faced layoffs at 40. Dreams of a dark forest, unconscious depths, haunted him. He learned beekeeping, finding solace in hives, a shift from laborer to nurturer. Jung saw 40 as life's start because this crisis isn't chaos, it's clarity, a call to live beyond survival. Matt and Phil don't flee disruption, they embrace it, aligning with the psyche's deeper currents. For men, this is when the unconscious becomes a partner, not a shadow, guiding them to a life of substance. Optimized Jungian solution. Jung's optimal approach harnesses this crisis deliberately. First, dream work. A nightly log, reviewed weekly with symbols of transformation, decodes messages. Matt's boat, transition, Phil's forest, growth. Second, symbolic engagement. 2 hours weekly, sailing, beekeeping, responds to these cues, grounding the unconscious in action. Third, community. Monthly volunteering or men's groups connects the crisis to others, easing isolation. Fourth, therapy. Biweekly Jungian sessions. Amplifies the call asking, "What's missing?" 5th, ritual closure. Mat launching a boat, Phil tasting honey, marks the shift monthly. Men must commit daily logs, weekly pursuits, monthly connections, turning 40's upheaval into a profound beginning where crisis births purpose. 5. Balancing conscious and unconscious analysis. Carl Jung's psychology hinges on the interplay between the conscious and unconscious realms of the psyche, a dynamic he saw as central to human development. For men, the first half of life, roughly from adolescence to the late 30s, is dominated by the conscious mind. Logic, discipline, and structure reign supreme as they build careers, uphold societal roles, and suppress emotional or intuitive impulses deemed unproductive or unmanly. This period is about establishing order, whether it's climbing the corporate ladder, mastering a trade, or providing for a family. The ego, as the seat of consciousness, constructs a rigid identity aligned with cultural expectations: the dependable worker, the stoic husband, the unflinching leader. The unconscious, home to emotions, dreams, instincts, and repressed desires, is often sidelined, dismissed as irrelevant to the practical demands of life. By age 40, however, Jung observed a critical turning point, which he elaborates in Ion. Researches into the Phenomenology of the Self, 1951. The conscious mind's dominance begins to falter as external achievements, promotions, financial stability, or a well-run household lose their ability to satisfy. The unconscious, long neglected, asserts itself with increasing force, manifesting through restlessness, vivid dreams, or a vague sense of dissatisfaction. For Jung, this isn't a breakdown but a natural evolution. Midlife is when the psyche demands balance between these two poles. He described this as the reconciliation of opposites, a process where strength meets sensitivity, reason meets intuition, and control meets surrender. Without this integration, men risk stagnation, trapped in a one-dimensional existence. With it, they unlock a richer, more authentic life. Consider Greg, a 44-year-old former logistics manager who epitomized conscious control. For 20 years, he thrived on schedules, quotas, and efficiency, priding himself on never showing weakness. At 40, he hit a wall. Burnout crept in, and he began dreaming of chaotic storms, a Jungian symbol of an unleashed unconscious. He felt an inexplicable urge to break free, yet his manager identity resisted. Eventually, he took a sabbatical, started sculpting clay, a tactile, intuitive act he'd never tried, and wrote reflective essays about his career's toll on his soul. Jung would interpret this as the unconscious breaking through. Greg's storms weren't chaos, but a call to balance his rigid logic with creativity and vulnerability. The clay wasn't just a hobby. It was a bridge between his controlled past and a fluid, uncharted present. Jung argued that this balance is uniquely possible at 40 because men have accumulated enough life experience to withstand the unconscious's intensity. Greg's earlier self might have dismissed sculpting as frivolous. At 40, he had the maturity to see its value. This integration transforms midlife from a period of loss to one of gain. Men don't just survive, they begin living fully, embracing both their disciplined exterior and their untamed interior. Jung saw this as a hallmark of individuation, where the psyche's halves merge, birthing a self that's not split but whole. For men, 40 is the beginning, because it's when they can stop being mere cogs in a machine and start being human. Complex, contradictory, and alive. Another example. Tom, a 41-year-old ex-firefighter, lived by physical courage and quick decisions, pure consciousness. At 40, after a minor injury sidelined him, he felt adrift, haunted by dreams of dark caves, a Jungian motif of the unconscious depths. He began gardening, a slow, intuitive process, and joined a men's group to discuss his fears. Acts his younger self would have scorned. Jung would see this as life starting. Tom's caves weren't threats but invitations to explore his buried emotions, balanced with his heroic past. At 40, men like Tom and Greg don't abandon strength, they enrich it with depth, making this age a true genesis. Optimized Jungian solution. To optimize this balance, Jung offers a multifaceted approach rooted in engaging both conscious and unconscious actively. First, men should practice dream analysis with rigor. Greg could keep a nightly dream journal, noting storm symbols, and spend 15 minutes each morning decoding them with a Jungian guidebook, e.g., Man and His Symbols. Storms might signal suppressed chaos. Sculpting becomes his response, channeling that energy. Tom's cave dreams could prompt gardening as a meditative act, grounding his unconscious in soil. Second, Jung's active imagination is crucial. Men should dedicate 20 minutes daily to visualize their unconscious as a character, e.g., Greg's storm spirit, and ask, "What do you need?" Answers: freedom, expression. Guide practical steps like sculpting or writing. Third, creative outlets are non-negotiable. Tom's gardening or Greg's clay work should be weekly rituals, at least 2 hours, to externalize the unconscious tangibly. Jung saw creativity as a dialogue between realms. Men must commit to it consistently. Fourth, mindfulness meditation. 15 minutes daily quiets the conscious mind, letting intuition rise. Greg might focus on his breath, noticing how storms feel in his body, while Tom could meditate in his garden, sensing the earth's pulse. Finally, Jungian therapy, weekly sessions, offers a mediator, exploring how past control suppressed depth, then integrating it. Men must approach this as a disciplined practice, daily, weekly checkpoints, turning 40 into a launch pad for a balanced, vibrant life where reason and soul coexist. Jung's life at 40, a personal testament analysis. Jung's own midlife journey at age 38 to 40, 1913 to 1915, is a powerful lens for understanding why he might view 40 as life's true beginning, especially for men. Before this period, Jung was a paragon of conscious success, a renowned psychiatrist, husband, and father, with a thriving practice in Zurich. His persona was impeccable: the intellectual, the professional, the man who had it all. Yet after his 1912 break with Sigmund Freud, a mentor and father figure, Jung plunged into a profound crisis. This wasn't mere professional fallout. It was a psychic upheaval that shattered his carefully built identity. From 1913 onward, peaking around 40, he experienced intense dreams, visions, and inner turmoil, which he meticulously documented in the Red Book, published posthumously in 2009. This wasn't a collapse, but a breakthrough. Jung described it as a confrontation with the unconscious, a descent into a chaotic inner world filled with archetypal figures: Philemon, a wise old man; Salome, a seductive Anima; and serpents symbolizing transformation. Before 40, he lived outwardly, publishing, lecturing, conforming to academia's demands. At 40, he turned inward, spending hours in his Bollingen Tower sketching mandalas, writing dialogues with these figures, and wrestling with his shadow, doubts about his intellect, suppressed spirituality. This shift birthed his greatest contributions: individuation, the collective unconscious; archetypes, ideas that redefine psychology. For Jung, 40 was when life began, because it marked his liberation from ego-driven ambition to soul-driven exploration. He wrote in Memories, Dreams, Reflections, 1961, that this period was the origin of my real life, a time when he stopped being a successful man and became a seeker of truth. His crisis wasn't weakness, it was courage, a model for men at 40. Before, he mirrored society's ideal. After, he mirrored his psyche's depths, living authentically despite ridicule from peers who saw his visions as madness. This resonates with men broadly. Take Richard, a 40-year-old former ad executive. At 38, he was a high flyer, big clients, big bonuses, but a divorce at 39 cracked his persona. At 40, inspired by Jung's story, he left advertising, moved to a rural cabin, and began painting abstract art while studying mythology. Like Jung, Richard's crisis, loss of status, family, pushed him into his unconscious, where he found mandalas in his brushstrokes and wisdom in ancient tales. Another case, Sam, 41, a mechanic, hit rock bottom after a business failure. Reading the Red Book, he started carving wooden figures of his dream characters, a warrior, a sage, rebuilding his life from within. Jung's 40 was a beginning because it's when he traded external validation for internal truth, a path men can follow. His visions weren't delusions but signposts. His tower wasn't retreat but rebirth. For men, 40 starts life because it's when they can shed the provider mask and embrace the seeker within, echoing Jung's own transformation from a man of the world to a man of the soul. Optimized Jungian solution. Jung's personal testament offers a blueprint for men at 40, optimized through immersive practices. First, men should study Jung's works, the Red Book or Memories, Dreams, Reflections, dedicating an hour weekly to absorb his journey. Richard could annotate passages about Philemon, seeing parallels in his own wise man paintings. Second, active imagination is vital. Sam might spend 30 minutes daily conversing with his carved warrior, asking, "What strength do I need?" Answers, resilience, purpose guide real-world actions like restarting his shop. Third, symbolic creation mirrors Jung's mandalas. Men should craft weekly, Richard's paintings, Sam's carvings, at least 2 hours as a ritual of inner dialogue. Fourth, solitude. Jung's tower time means a monthly retreat, a weekend alone to reflect, free of distractions. Fifth, Jungian analysis, bi-weekly sessions, deepens this, exploring how past roles, executive, mechanic, stifled the soul, then charting a new path. Finally, service. Volunteering monthly, like Jung's later teaching, grounds this in community. Men must treat this as a sacred discipline, weekly reading, daily imagination, monthly solitude, making 40 a profound beginning, as Jung did, where life shifts from ego's stage to psyche's canvas. Conclusion. Why life begins at 40 for men. Jung saw 40 as a rebirth. Men move from ego to individuation, shadow integration, mature archetypes, and balance. Example. Ben, 40, a welder, left the shop, built a cabin, and studied astronomy, saying, "I'm finally me." Life begins here because it's authentic.